Hi, my name's Michael and welcome to Today Dreamer, a podcast and YouTube channel that examines the interplay between inner work and outer work. Through conscious conversations and practical walkthroughs, we'll be exploring ideas and practices to help you find a deeper sense of clarity, develop your focus, and take meaningful action. I hope you love the show. I want to welcome you to this episode of the podcast and share my gratitude with you for being here. Before we begin, I'd like to invite you into a space with me. And I'd like you to, if you're open to it, use this as an opportunity to pause from whatever's going on in your day or night, wherever you are, to, drop into yourself, and to let everything else just dissolve for a moment and hit that little reset button, pause for a second. And I think that would be a nice way to lead into this podcast. So I'm going to invite you now to take, let's say, 2 deep breaths as slow as you possibly can, in through the nose, using your diaphragm. And picture the breath rising in and kind of hold space somewhere on your forehead, as strange as that may sound, and then allow that release to take place effortlessly and with the same smoothness and consistency as the inhale. And then we'll get into things. I'll do it with you now. So allow your eyes to close gently, and in we go. Today's episode is with Nikki Slade. Lately, I've been exploring vibration, this idea of vibes, from a variety of different perspectives, a scientific perspective, different, spiritual perspectives, and social perspectives, and the those social vibes and feelings. Through sound, vibrational energy through sound, and the different spectrum of moods that can be experienced through that. And it's been quite a fun exploration. And I've really enjoyed having a few conversations, if you've been listening to the podcast, around chanting and this idea of our vibration that we create and in some way share in a sense of unity and union with one another when we sing and we create one voice through these mantras or sounds, these ancient noises or vibrations, I guess. So in this exploration, I've been wanting to speak to people that lead chanting sessions or kirtans, and I came across Nikki Slade. Nikki is quite an extraordinary human, as you're about to find out. She's had some very profound life experiences that she's about to share with us, and that have been really a strong catalyst for change in her life. And we're going to explore what that looks like and her journey through that experience through those experiences, and the lessons and the wisdom that she has to share with us, as well as looking at chanting, vibrational energy, and really how to free your inner voice, which is something, a bit of a theme at the moment as well, that I'm kind of a thread that I'm following along. So I really hope that you can find a way to engage with the conversation that I'm about to share with you from a really open-minded and even a playful way. If you're able to surrender into this one, I really feel like there's some really nice insights that can be gained. So again, thank you for coming on this journey with me. And if you're enjoying what you're listening to or watching, then please consider, deepening that participation through whatever way you would like, whether it's hitting a subscribe button, sharing the show with a friend, connecting with me in some way, leaving a review or whatever. Just consider kind of deepening the connection, because I feel like I'm on this journey with you, and I'd like to, continue that feeling and to kind of, I guess, build a little bit of, meaningful, vibrational energy, I guess. So thank you so much, and let's get into this conversation with Nikki Slade.
I like to follow the flow. In fact, when I'm working, I'm very much about following intuition, inner connection, inner guidance. And I think in my early life, I didn't do that. I didn't know how to do that. And actually, that was what was missing. That was that ability to trust that the way, if you like, is an inner job, was something that I was definitely seeking in my early life. And I sought for it in all of the places that many of us try and find answers. I'm quite candid about the fact that I pursued the path of addiction for a while, and really it was that kind of rock bottom in the field of addiction, or the journey of addiction, that led me to the path I've been on now for over 30 years, which is the path of mantra and sound and chanting. And it was such a relief to actually find, when I first discovered the practice, what I was looking for, and that was that vibrational connection. So I think as many addicts who are in recovery or recovering would say, what I'm really seeking is connection, but I don't know where to find it. And that's why I think, because millions of people are addicted to something, looking outside to release that craving inside, that kind of, what is it? I'm feeling ill at ease, and to find something completely for free that's like the running waters, the living waters of life inside my own heart was just incredible. It was such an incredible revelation that, yes, that I could go home on the inside without the use of a drink or a drug. It was absolutely phenomenal for me. I was about 27 years old, so that's about 30 years ago now, when I first came into the practice. But I'll let you trigger off questions, because I've spoken a bit there.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And there's so many roads we could take, and I wouldn't mind exploring a handful of them. I feel like, yeah, it's definitely seems to be the case that's kind of the cosmic joke of it all, right? Like, we are searching for, it's oftentimes a lot of us feel, or probably all of us, at some point feel quite lost. And from the inside, we don't really know where we're going, and we don't know what we're doing here. And yeah, it's almost as if once we realize you know, and who we are in a sense, or connect with who we are on a deeper level, it's like we've always kind of been there. There's just been layers upon layers of kind of, you know, different elements kind of stacked on top of us that kind of blind the way. And it seems like it's quite, for me personally anyways, quite a cyclical process. It's not, it's as though there's a feeling of knowing that arises in certain moments and then passes, and then comes back, you know. It may be different for you, and I guess everyone's at a different stage in their process. But could you talk to me a little bit about, you know, stepping into that acceptance and connecting with that deeper, I guess, inner version of yourself? I'm sure there's a lot of different ways to describe it, but how do we step into that, or how do we allow for that to happen, and how do we open up to that that knowing inside?
Yeah, well, I think there are no quick fixes. It is a cyclical journey, and each cycle, I think, the journey deepens. But because my main love in life is mantra and chanting, and has been a huge part of my life for, as I say, 30 years, 30 odd years. When I practice chanting regularly, and I have the very good fortune to share that with others every single day now, um, I can actually hear, um, if you like, my inner voice guiding me, and it's through the practice that those revelations come, you know, and I find that all good things come. Like Michael, we didn't know each other, but because I've opened up to this life, you're in Australia, I'm here in London, you know, and we found one another. And so I just trust the intelligence of that flow, that, you know, I'm meant to be talking to you this morning here in London, and, you know, and then I'll get intuitive guidance as to the next place I'm supposed to be. So, you know, in fact, my entire working life is very, very flowing like that. It's very organic. I very, very rarely heavily promote anything. In fact, I'm very uncomfortable doing that, because I'm very clear that the divine promotes me, promotes all of us actually, and knows exactly where to place me, and, you know, knows who I should be in front of, knows who's coming, and my job is to get out of the way of myself and listen. And yes, you talk about acceptance. I think acceptance is an extremely important quality, because without that love and acceptance of oneself, it is challenging in this world. You know, one is looking, and I think really at the heart of addiction, you know, that disease of seeking love, seeking approval, seeking validation, seeking affirmation, all of those things that every soul longs for, is that sense of, am I okay? Am I safe? Is everything going to be all right? You know, and I think it's a lifelong journey, that, and the answers, as you say, excuse me, are within, and it's never done, it's never dusted, it's never fixed until, you know, one becomes established in that state of reunion with the inner self. Now, I've had many, many moments of reunion. My lifelong journey personally is to expand those moments and to be able to have more of them. And you were saying there were lots of things that cover that, like patterns and programmings. And so, you know, you find out where you're still holding on to a story when you get triggered, you know. So being triggered pulls one into a river, you know, where we're in fear, and we make somebody else our higher power, we make a situation our higher power, and then we lose that connection. So I find with the chanting, which is ostensibly a meditation, really, I can get back into that zone of that connection, and then that feeling of self-acceptance, self-love starts to arise again, and it's always then that I feel all right with the world. When I disconnect from that, then it's just a journey of giving power away, and yeah, one has to look at the map again, so to speak. We're on maps today, Michael.
Yes, we definitely are. Yeah, I definitely feel what you're saying. It seems to me that like I really enjoy this exploration into these different practices, and it seems like every practice has its own kind of unique contribution and flavor, I guess, to the way we experience this state of stillness. For chanting, personally, I've really experienced an embodied feeling, a heart feeling, like a warmness and an openness that's quite unique, I think, to chanting. I'm just kind of dipping my toes in the waters, so to speak, at the moment. I've just got a little harmonium shruti box that arrived a couple of days ago.
Lovely.
Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out, trying to find my voice, which is quite difficult. But there's something I think as well to be said around just kind of the place where the voice comes from rather than the sound. Especially, it feels that way in the beginning. But the place where the voice comes from, this inner truth, this kind of real authenticity. It seems to me when I hear people singing from that place, even if they're not hitting all the notes, and even if it doesn't sound amazing, I feel something, and that connects to this kind of idea of connecting with this sense of feeling that comes from chanting. Do you experience that at all, or do you have any kind of words of wisdom around finding your voice?
Yeah, I love what you just shared. Chanting, especially when you're leading a kirtan meaning to sing the name of the highest vibration according to one's own understanding, is a function of connecting to the primordial ground, like we all have within us, in essence, a primordial vibration, the original vibration. And when we resonate with that, when we come into alignment with that, then everything starts to flow from that place. We recognize that is who we are. And it has got nothing to do, as you're right with that, Michael, about being a good singer. I mean, if you're a good singer, it can be a bonus, but it can go against you because it can lead you into performance as opposed to just allowing the channel of a higher grace, to come through you. So finding voice, my voice found me because I definitely didn't have my voice in my early life. I was very underconfident, very, very reliant on personality, very reliant on surviving, really, masking to kind of cope with this scary world. It was a bit like the Jungle Book or something. Where am I? Where am I going? Who am I? What on earth is this all about? I was really bemused for a long time. I was very fortunate to have a profound awakening in 1989 directly through this practice of kirtan chanting. And back then, it wasn't a common thing in the West. I mean, yes, in Asian culture, of course. However, in kind of Western London, there weren't very many people doing that at all, and I came across a particular meditation group where there was some chanting, and I purchased what was a cassette tape in those days, and I was also out of work as an actor because that was my first career. I haven't done that for many years now, but I was out of work at the time, as most actors are, and I was working in a delicatessen part-time and feeling very subdued and like, oh, the career's going nowhere. Again, this big question, who am I? Where am I going? I think the reason I was drawn to acting, I thought, well, like, at least I could hide and pretend to be somebody else, and I wouldn't have to face myself in some way, you know. And I would go home in the lunch hour, which was around, my house was around the corner, and I put this cassette tape on and I started chanting along with it. And I suddenly started to have these movements of Shakti, if you like, divine energy moving through my whole system. And I started to have profound experiences of unity consciousness. I remember walking in a London park, and everybody I looked at was an extension of my very own self. It was the most amazing feeling, the kind of experience that you might have had, you know, taking a pill or a drug, or, you know, it was, but it really was the true state. And I was in that state for a month of my life. Like, there was absolutely no separation, and no fear. And then there were waves upon waves of bliss that kept arising, and I would laugh and cry with joy. It was like I could walk through walls with fearlessness, you know, like I could approach anybody, I could have a conversation. There was no limit.
And were you continuing your practice throughout this month? Like, what was that month like? That's interesting.
Yeah, I was chanting every day. And what was interesting, Michael, is that my circumstances had not changed. I was still an out of work actor. I was still, you know, but once I connected to that state, that pure consciousness within, it did not matter. It didn't matter who I was and where I was going, because I was at home. And, you know, this is why I understand why some ascetic monks or sadhus, shall we say, can just sit by the side of the road for centuries in India, you know, because when you connect with that state, you don't need anything. You certainly don't need approval, validation, affirmation, which was, you know, the whole deal. When I was in active addiction, it was this desperate search for reassurance from the outside world. Well, I had all the assurance in the world because I was that. I was in that zone, and I felt I could do anything. I felt I could conquer the world, you know. And it was a really blessed month. It was a classic spiritual awakening, where I was given hope out of a dark rabbit hole, you know.
But it seems like there was something that took place for that to happen. Like, there was a change. There was a little bit of an experimentation from your part. There was you stepping into something before this actually happened, before this kind of profound experience took place. And I think that's an important thing to recognize as well, that, you know, it does definitely take place with these spiritual awakenings out of thin air. But they do also, and not saying that that needs to happen for anyone, or that's what people should be aiming for, or, you know, none of that. But I think the important thing about this transformation in your life from such a low point to such, you know, the extreme opposite, something worth recognizing is this initial step of, you know, I'm going to try something a little bit different. I'm going to see what this is about, and I'm going to give this a go.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you know, they say, don't they, if you do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, the definition of insanity is there. However, if you want a new result, you have to do something different. And I mean, think about it. You know, I was like middle class girl in London in the 80s. Can you imagine how weird that was? Really, think about it, to be chanting in that era, you know. You know, putting a cassette on every day. I mean, my partner at the time really did think I was losing the plot, you know. But the fact was, I was losing the original plot, and thank God, you know, the original plot was just not serving me,
Well,
being
that's the crazy
stuck.
one, really, isn't it? Mm.
Yeah, that's right. The kind of, I was lost in trying to find myself in the day-to-day conditioning, expectations from family, expectation from friends of who I was and how I was supposed to show up. But what was lovely when I was in that state is that these sort of paradigms that are created by our conditioning just did not exist, you know. And there was a beautiful feeling that the direction is always there, rather like, I don't know if you ever read that beautiful book by Paulo Coelho, is it? The Alchemist.
Yeah, I was gifted that
That's it.
for my last birthday, actually. It was a beautiful book.
Yeah, that's really strange, isn't it, that I said that? I haven't mentioned that book, but that book had a profound effect on me in my 20s, because for me that's the ultimate book about someone who had the courage to follow the guidance within.
Mm.
And so yeah, I thank God every day that I had that that month, because no matter what happens now in my journey, I can always anchor back. And if somebody tells me, life's a bitch and then you die, we all have moments, don't we, when we actually think that. But I know that that's not the truth. I know from my own experience that there is a meaning, there is a purpose, and sometimes it's trapped behind a veil of clouds, because I just want to get very, very clear to anybody who might be listening. I was blessed to have that experience, and I have my sadhana, spiritual path to follow. I'm an imperfect or perfectly imperfect human being, and I've got stuff to work with, like we all have. I'm not enlightened as such. However, I did have a glimpse of what enlightenment feels like. Um, and so every day, I remember that anchor, and I, choose to move into a deeper acceptance of everything about myself, but most importantly about others too. The most the most important thing, that I'm realizing these days is to see my brother and my sister in every face. As soon as I'm judging anyone or anything, very quickly, because I'm quite sensitive these days, I'm thrown outside the connection. I can't get away with judgment.
Mm.
I have to really watch what I'm thinking about. Um, and that's the sadhana. And then I find that when I've put that effort in to be mindful about what I'm thinking about and my actions, I find that there's then another wave of grace, and I'll have another exquisite heart opening, that glorious glimpse again of that state. But it is up to us, to do the work. And really, the work is getting out of the way, and just remembering who we are and behaving as we were designed to be, which is loving. People often say, are you religious, or what religion do you follow? And if I follow anything, it's the religion of love. And I'm a junior in studying the language of love. I think it's such a bandied around word, isn't it? Love. Every song has the word love in it. The love I experienced in that awakening moment was so complete. There was nothing missing. It was absolutely whole and complete. And there was no more words. There was nothing more to say. And it was just natural to love everyone and everything around me. And in fact, there was one moment in that experience where I had a vision, and the vision was of this beautiful being who appeared before me, probably in my third eye, but it really did feel like, I don't know what sex it was genderless, you know, shimmering blue and ebony black hair, sort of charcoal eyes, and there was like dew, like rose dew pouring down its face, and it was kind of shaking its head like this. And the being said, "What do you want to know?" And I just said, "Why is it so hard down here?" And the being said, "Dearest Nikki, all there ever has been, all there ever is, and all there ever will be is love. That is all that is happening here on earth. And everything else we do is tiddlywinks. It's just the moving of the chess pieces back and forth, the job, the this, the that. But then it all becomes alive and meaningful, when we have that connection. And I think, each of us is on this wonderful voyage, wonderful journey to experience that grace, to experience that vibration, that energy within. And, chanting has been phenomenal for me to get in touch with that space.
Thank you for sharing all of that, Nikki. That sounds like it's quite a lot to take in, but I'm definitely, resonating with what you're saying. And I can definitely feel the truth within that. I don't even know where to begin with unpacking all of that. I guess a lot of it probably doesn't need to be unpacked, and it kind of stands, on its own legs. But I want to talk a little bit more around this idea of vibration and the vibration of all that is, and trusting or aligning our own rhythm, our own vibrational kind of energy with everything else that's out there. And I think it happens naturally. I think that we are already kind of connected and vibrating with all that is. I'm not sure how things could be any other way. I want to write a book on vibes. I'm kind of getting information from different guests on their own take on vibes, and I wanted to hear what your thoughts on that as well, and kind of the way you look at vibration, and especially from someone that leads these kirtans, and even the vibration of sound, and how that transmits, and how that connects, and how you can share that and embrace that and become one with that. And then, linking into what you were saying about the vibration of your life, and getting out of the way to be able to kind of, connect or calibrate yourself with what's really going on. Could you speak a little bit about vibes or vibrational energy?
Yeah, funnily enough, I run a program one-to-one, but it also comes into some of the coursework that I offer. I call it Vibe Fit. In other words, identifying vibrational fitness. So, we're all used to the model of going to a gym to get fit, or whatever mode we use, or perhaps we do yoga, and we all understand what it is to pursue physical fitness and energy. But I think the new era is the pursuit of inner fitness, the inner life, the thirst for the inner life, that connection to the inner vibration. This is where a lot of the world are moving now. And it's nothing new. It's been here since the beginning of time. Once we've tried everything else, once we've exhausted everything else, once we've disconnected to the extreme, and in the individual, like a rock bottom through drink and drugs, whatever rock bottom we have.
Like a collective rock bottom, yeah.
The collective rock bottom, it's like, oh God, and now we've had COVID, yada, 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 what we've really excelled ourselves at the bottom. so that doesn't work, that doesn't work. What is it I'm looking for? You know, it's a bit like Winnie the Pooh, what do tigers like best? You know, we go, oh my God, yes, it's the vibe. You know, I mean, in the 60s, everybody was saying good vibes, man, and all of this, you know, and it's been used as a lingo word, hasn't it, within the music industry? But in truth, vibration is exactly where it's at. And sound, for me, is the fastest way to tap into the the primordial field where the vibration is the sweetest. And that's what I'm interested in my work. That's my main passion, is to create spaces where people can connect to that original field. And then what they do with that connection is their choice. You know, it's a bit like being a potter. It's like, here's the clay. I'm going to introduce you to clay. I'm going to introduce you to what is possible. And then whether you make that into a bowl or a vase is your choice. That's the tiddlywinks in a way. It's like, you know, for some people, they're going to follow this vocation, they're going to go to that country. That's the joy that we can do anything once we're connected. But we have it the other way around, don't we? We often say, you know, when I have the promotion, when I cheer up, when I this, you know, I will maybe look into some of that. But we've been starting at the opposite end, and you know, this is not new or revelatory, I think, to many people, what I'm saying. But we are all looking for that nectarian drink. You know, no wonder people are alcoholics, you know, because they're asking the right question. Where is the long, cool drink that will fill my soul so that I'm full on the inside? And so then the wellspring can then expand to other people. And so, you know, I would say to anyone, start with the sound, start with mantra, you know, find a mantra that really resonates with you. This is really important, you know, don't just accept one blindly, you know, just listen to various kirtan recordings, mantra recordings. You know, if you're really longing to discover that vibrational connection through the power of prayer, you will be put together with the right environment, the right path, the right practice for you. Yeah, so in the inner fitness work that I offer, you know, people come. I'm a bit like a kind of vibrational gym trainer, and the person will come with their hopes, aspirations of what they want to create, and you know, the sessions are all around supporting that connection. And then what I love to do is to build a bridge between these kind of very yogic sonic practices and real life, because it's one thing, isn't it, to be doing all of our sacred practices in our, you know, meditation spaces, meditation centers, retreat spaces, yoga centers. But the really interesting moment is when we feel it pouring into our daily life, so that where we're coming from, you know, we're chanting our lives, we're singing our lives, you know. There's a beautiful book by Hazrat Inayat Khan, which is like my Bible, really. It's called The Music of Life. And, you know, he talks about all of us being the instruments of one great orchestra, and that if there's one instrument that is not playing its true note, then the world is a little less well off. So, in other words, it's our joy to be the instrument that we were designed to be. So, you know, if we were born to be a piccolo, for example, which is a very unique instrument and quite high pitched, and we find ourselves in a trombone section, we're going to have the experience that we're being blasted out, we're not being heard, and we're suddenly very disillusioned. Is there something wrong with us? No. We just ended up in the wrong section for us. But I'll also back up that nothing's wrong because everything's a learning curve. So, you know, the metaphor in life is that, you know, in my early life, I was in all sorts of wrong, but they weren't really wrong. They were just places where I learned what wasn't right for Nikki, you know, where I was in some quite heavy scenes, you know. But they were perfect because they were blasting me out, really, like the trombones. No offense against trombones. Trombones are perfect if you don't have the trombones coming in that perfect moment. But I think what I love about that book is there's a place for everyone. It's like nothing's ever really wrong. It's just that we need to understand the music that is in us, the music of our own life. Which section am I in? And by the way, that section can change. It's like, you know, you might have been a trumpeter, for example, who's played classical for many, many years, and then suddenly you want to be like Louis Armstrong, you know, in a jazz band. But when that moment comes, it's probably advisable to let go of playing first trumpet in the classical orchestra because you're going to be frustrated, and something that used to be fun is suddenly discordant. That happened to me as an actress. It just didn't mean anything to me anymore. Was there something wrong with being an actor? Of course not. You know, it's a wonderful form of expression and it gives so much joy. However, for me, I was having the experience of being a classical trumpeter that needed to break out and move into the yoga of sound. You know, that was the section of the orchestra that I needed to be in, and that is a function of vibration. Coming back to your original inquiry, you know, we all feel a certain resonance, don't we? And I love it when, you know, that amazing moment where you're resonating with certain people, like there's a real sense of this person's in my music section and I'm in theirs, and we're meant to be playing, you know, like an amazing thing that's happened to me along the way on this path is that whenever I need something or the Shakti is showing me that there's a next step to take. So, for example, I'm going to create a video course in the next 2 to 3 months. Never done that before. And the beauty of COVID is that it's pushed everybody into this place. You know, who knows whether I'd be chatting to you if it hadn't been for COVID. I don't know. But, you know, and I was thinking, how am I going to do it? And then just magically, out of nowhere, one of my chanting clients is an expert in all of that and has stepped forward. And I've had that all the way along the way. You know, I remember years ago I had a client who worked for a well-known ad company in London, and he was my private client, and he wouldn't mind me sharing because he's given me a testimonial on my website. But he gave me the opportunity to lead a team build for his, you know, account holders and all the people that were working in his office. And it was the most memorable morning. I mean, to have all of these ad guys chanting their socks off, you know, and it was quite edgy, risky stuff. I mean, you know, back in the day, that was really odd to do that. But they absolutely loved it. And they afterwards said they had more energy, you know, in one morning of chanting than they'd had in 6 months, you know, and they'd got to know each other better than being in 6 months in an open plan office where ostensibly you should be all tight with everybody. But it was the chanting, it was the vibration that pulled them all together. And then they started, you know, buzzing with creative ideas. And then as a result of that, I've been looking for ways of getting my work across because it's very difficult to describe. I imagine like maybe Coca-Cola when it first came out. How do you describe Coca-Cola? And then the whole thing came up, the real thing. I didn't know how to describe vibrational energy work really. So, and I manifested 6 months of complimentary, can you imagine, ad time from this very well-known ad company. And they did this campaign for me, and they came up with the phrase chemistry at work, because they knew that they needed to find a pitch for me that would be resonant with finance managers, because the finance managers need to know what this product is going to produce. So they identified, when you've got chemistry between people, when you've got good chemistry flowing inside, there's more productivity and therefore more success. And they just did this whole storyboard. And I was gobsmacked, there was this sort of woo-woo, effectively, some people could say, thing that you couldn't really grasp. And they went, poof, and they, and I did quite a few engagements for teams, so I guess the point of that story is that when we're in that vibrational zone, the best music happens in our life.
I love that. I love the idea of that, of the music and the instrument. What were you going to say about where we're not?
Well, when we're not in that complete attunement, we will find that we're a violin sitting in the viola section, which is not as extreme as a piccolo and a trombone, but it's like there's something not quite.
It doesn't feel right. Yeah, and I think I
don't know what it is. It's because it gets. You see, the more awake we get, Michael, isn't it true? It gets subtler and subtler. At the beginning, there are very extreme gaps. Particularly if you're on the path of addiction, which is a phenomenal path, by the way. I mean, you learn a lot if you're going through addiction. Or whatever it is. Some other people go through terrible physical tragedy, or they have people that die when they're very young in their life, or, and that's a really, really heartbreaking extreme to feel. And you think, oh my God, will I ever find harmony again? But the closer we get very, very close, but then it's not quite. And it's like, I like these people, but there's something that's not quite on the bone of who I am.
I think that's just thinking back to your story about the when you're an actress earlier in the day, and you were wearing these masks, I guess, metaphorically and literally as well, and then to have such a profound experience over the month, to then have to kind of make sense of all of that amongst your peers at the time and the people in that grungy scene that you mentioned, that was so in a different space, because you had transitioned, like you said, out of that space, and then to kind of find your element amongst all of that must have been an interesting process. And I love what you said about the instruments, and I feel as though these finding it's, I think that's also metaphorical and literal as well. When you're looking for an instrument to play, whatever you naturally gravitate towards is usually what's meant to be for you, and I found that personally. And then that gives you a sense of motivation and drive, and you go a bit deeper into that instrument that you might not have otherwise done if you were forced to play it, or if it was the only one offered at your music teacher's office. And then having like thinking about that in a metaphorical sense as well, is like everyone's got some kind of a unique path, some kind of a unique thing that makes them who they are. We're all kind of adding, our paint strokes to the big painting, or our voice to the choir. And the interesting thing about chanting, I feel, is though it brings those vibrations in together as kind of as a union. And it reminds us of kind of the unity that is already there in life, because we are all in this together. We are all part of the one system. And it's so easy to forget that with the different illusions, and like we mentioned earlier, the conditioning that takes place and that kind of covers everything over. But I find these practices, coming back to these practices, allows us to, again, get glimpses or take breaths within this kind of dance or experience that we're going through. Could we talk a little bit? I know I'm just kind of cognizant of time. Could we talk a little bit about the specifics of chanting and kind of break it down a little bit? Because I'm interested from, I guess, my analytical side of things. I'd be interested to kind of break apart, for example, how you have a drone sound in the background. I mentioned the Shruti box recently, and the words, the mantras, the meaning, even the different flavors, or the different, like you mentioned earlier, go with what calls you in terms of a mantra, the different flavors within, maybe the scales. Could you tell me about the elements of a chant?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. One thing I wanted to say just before I do that, but it will kind of weave in,
Hmm.
is we get lost in words as human beings. We try and cement everything together through words, um, but the words only transmit once the vibration is in, and then the words ride the vibration that we're set to. In other words, we start to speak from a space of connection
Hmm.
rather than la, to try and find that connection. And chanting really supports that, actually. So what is chanting? So really, the path of kirtan is bhakti yoga, and many of you watching may well already be great fans of bhakti yoga, but for those of you who don't know, bhakti essentially means devotion, longing to come back to that wellspring within. There is a real thirst for homecoming, reunion with the inner self. We may not know that that's what that thirst has been all this time. Bhakti is this trust that as we chant with devotion, we will have an absolute experience of reunion with our own inner self. The, the practice of kirtan, chanting mantras of love, came from the poet saint movement of India in 7th century AD, in the Tamil Nadu region, where you had the Alvas and the Nayanas, who were poet saints who had found that connection to supreme consciousness in their own heart. And they had waves upon waves of bliss arising. And from that place of bliss, they wrote beautiful poetry, which they would then go into the marketplace and they would share these poems that they had tapped into. Effectively, the words, this is exactly what I'm talking about, they got into the vibrational zone through these deep states of meditation, and then the poetry would arise. And they knew that this was really important because they found the temple within. And they knew that, particularly in India, there was this caste system where the lower caste were not welcome in temples because they didn't have money to pay the priests, etc. So they went to the marketplace and said, look, you have a treasure within you. You have everything that you need within you. You know, go within. You don't need an external temple. It's all here. And you can imagine that the people were so overjoyed and so inspired that they began singing in the streets. They might have chanted, they might have taken a couple of words from the poem, like, hey Ram, hey Ram. So they'd sing 3 or 4 words, hey Ram, and people would maybe play instruments in the streets. They might have banged pots and pans, but it was like a celebration of what ostensibly they had discovered within. And hence, the name kirtan arose. It was the people's response to the poet saints. And so mantra means instrument of the mind. So we have a mantra, my favorite being Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. I bow to, or I merge with, my own true self. And as we repeat a mantra like Om Namah Shivaya or Shri Ram Jai Ram, victory to the light, to the beloved within, Shri, the most illustrious one. So we're talking about the vibrational quality of God, goddess, divine consciousness within. And it's really important when you chant that you have your own conscious contact. So that might be the Christ consciousness for you. It might be paganism. It might be the ocean itself. The most important thing is that you are devoting back in your heart to who you truly are through the practice. And as we repeat the mantras, you have instruments like the harmonium or the drone and a drum, a tanpura. There's a tanpura drone as well, which is like a cello instrument, doing, 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 you know. And the melodies are really important because they are inspired by raga, and raga are the scales, rags are the scales that many of these chants are inspired from, and rag means mood or mode. So the mood, the instruments, the mantra, the vibration, everything comes together, and then we have that supreme and sublime experience of connection, and we actually realize we are made of vibration. Everything is vibration, and actually the truest vibration is the vibration of bliss, ecstasy even. We're all chasing that elixir. You know, look at all the classic tales, the Holy Grail, Jason and the Golden Fleece, and there is a treasure within that is full of nectar. It is nectarian. It's like the drink of life. And I truly believe that addiction is the absolute polar opposite of that, but it is the same pursuit. It is the same pursuit, but misguided. So I believe that all beings that struggle with addiction, and that's most of the planet on some level, whether it's social media addiction or whatever, it's the thirst for the self. It's like being in a barren desert, and it's like, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? And the sad thing is, it's like the story of the old boy in India. He had nothing. He found it hard to eat every day, and he was a beggar, and he used to sit on a rubbish heap. And then after he dies, they dig up the rubbish heap, and there is a treasure chest underneath. And when they open it up, it's full of gold. And he spent his entire life unaware of the treasure. And, we've all had our beggar days, haven't we? Where we don't realize that we have this supreme connection in our heart. But yes, we are vibrational beings, and one can talk about it till the cows come home. But the best thing is just to chant and discover for ourselves. I've actually written a book. I'm not saying you will have to go out and buy it, but just as a matter of interest, I've documented my journey from early life through the awakening to the current day. But I write the book, The Healing Power of Chanting, as a tool for people to get on board the chanting train. So there are downloads of each chapter is named after a particular chant and documents a particular moment in my own journey. But what I love about the book is that as I share my journey, the reader can go on their journey too. And in fact, my editor and mentor, writing mentor, is from Australia, and then she invited me out to Melbourne, Michael, about 4 or 5 years ago. I came to chant for a big book launch that she was doing, and that was an amazing experience to have about 250 people in dinner gear, dicky bows and long dresses, coming to the front of this stage in this very unusual setting, and to have everybody chanting. It was very memorable event, and in fact the opening frame on my website is of that occasion. So I have very fond memories of Melbourne, which is probably why I when I saw you came from there, I was like, yay, Michael's from Melbourne. I remember happy memories.
You'll need to let me know if you're ever back in town. I feel as though you must have had so many experiences like this. Maybe not like that unique experience, but of that nature. You know, like you mentioned, these ad executives in the boardroom, and these people in their dinner attire at this book launch. I feel as though you also mentioned love, and having these kinds of experiences, which, if I am to reflect on my own life, they're really the most significant ones. They're experiences of love, of this kind of unity. And I can only imagine, you know, the amount of moments that you've experienced through this journey with chanting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very blessed, and we're all blessed. It's just whether we realize it or not. And anybody can be touched by the power of mantra. You know, the key thing is just to begin chanting. And you know, everybody is on, as I said, we're all in different sections of the orchestra.
Mm.
So you know, for some people, you might put on a Krishna Das recording. And you know, it's like, oh boy, this is where I resonate. I just don't want to go anywhere else. You know, that's the right one for you. You know, for others, you might be chanting with Jayu Tal, you know, wonderful kirtan leader, or Diva Pramel, you know, lovely, mellow, flowing. You know, everyone finds their own way. You know, for others, it's like traditional. You know, like I have a beautiful previous graduate of a training I run. I run a kirtan leader training every year, and she's called Gaia Sanskrit. You can find her online. She's phenomenal, and she studied Sanskrit since she was a young girl. And there's a real purity in the way she delivers mantra, recites. It really, really touches me very deeply. So, and you know what it's like. It's like somebody will be your route to connection for a period, and then it might change. But the key thing is not to get into, I've got to get it right, I've got to, oh, do you know, all cerebral about it. Just ask your heart to be led to the wellspring of mantra that is right for you. You know, start researching. There are many recordings out there. If you're interested in my stuff, you know, I'm on iTunes, Spotify. I have CDs if that's of interest to you.
And you've got these courses, like you mentioned, these one-on-one sessions.
Absolutely, yeah.
With this kirtan leadership training, what do you share with the students in that course? That sounds like it would be, yeah, like I've got no idea what that would look like.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's the first of its kind in the UK, a first accredited training. It's a 200-hour, and we go through all the elements of leading kirtan. You know, and you also get basic harmonium skills, tabla skills, learning about rag, vocal technique, leadership skills. You know, connecting with the channel. Mastering your inner critic. This is a very crucial part of the training, because that's something that we work on for 2 days to get out of the way of the divine channel, the divine flow. But I am, you know, and I'll let you know, Michael, when it's done. I'm about to put out, as I said at the beginning of the interview, a Learn to Lead Kirtan taster course, which is a lovely taster for people and will certainly give you the satisfaction of beginning to explore the elements. And then, you know, then there's the possibility of doing the 200-hour training. Now, that training is a physical training in the UK. Why is it physical? Because it's so shamanic, and it's like we have a maximum of 22 students, and we get on a boat together. We leave the harbour, and we go through all the vibrational seas until we pull up in our harbour at the end, 200 hours later. It's one of the most profound and privileged things I've ever had the opportunity to deliver. And I have a phenomenal team with me, and there's some wonderful testimonials from previous graduates on my website. Um, who knows though, in the future, with invitations, I could possibly run some kind of seminar program in Australia, or other areas of the world in the future, because I do recognize that not everybody can travel the other side of the world to do a physical training. So, anything's possible.
I guess you just have to continue flowing in whichever direction the wind blows you. So
Yes, yes.
I really appreciate you coming and having a conversation with me today, Nikki. Do you want to share a little bit more before we close things up on how people can get in touch and find out more, and where they'll be able to find your book as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So my book, The Healing Power of Chanting, is on Amazon, so you can find it there. Or you can write to my PA at my website, nikkislade.com. If you join my mail shot, you'll get some free downloads as well. And then, I have 4 chanting CDs. Nectarine was the first one, then Monsoon, then Epiphany is a double album. And then I have a sonic meditation one called Soundscape. So they're all available on iTunes, Spotify, etc. Or we can send you out a CD if you write again to my PA at my website. You can find it all there, and all the information of the course is there. Also, we could all chant together. Michael, I'm going to offer you a complimentary chant to come on a Thursday morning, 8 a.m. And
Okay. That sounds great.
I tell you what I'll do actually for your listeners. Anybody who has listened to this podcast and would like one complimentary chant, it would have to be the Thursday 8 a.m., which is what time for you? Is that 8 p.m. for you in Melbourne?
Oh,
My cat's coming in, so
yeah, I can hear. We're
this
talking about that primordial sound.
Yeah, he's a sonic cat, and he feels vibration actually very deeply. He's a Burmese, which I think Australia is quite familiar with the Burmese. I think there's a lot
Cats
of Burmese
are interesting
cats
creatures. They're fascinating. Think about them in
Yes.
Egyptian times, and our fascination with cats and their ability to tune into that vibrational energy is fascinating.
When I had that experience I talked about, the awakening, I had like ESP with cats. I know it sounds strange, but we were like chatting on a whole other plane. And I had flashes of Egypt. So it's funny that you should say that just as he comes in. And he's roaring, he's purring, he can feel the energy of this interview.
He's loving that patter.
He's loving it, yeah. So I was saying, if anybody would like to come to the 8 a.m. UK time, which is I think 8 p.m. your time, check the time conversions. If you just write to us and say, just watch the podcast, would love a free link for this one, then we can do so for the first one, and I'm certainly extending that to you, Michael. So let me know when you'd like to come.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be there very shortly. I'll definitely stay in touch and we'll organize a date. But thank you so much for sharing that with us and just sharing, all this. Like you said, it's kind of beyond words. This energy and this vibration of just your being here with us in this moment. I feel as though there's definitely something to be said around this idea of sound beyond language, the primordial language, the vibration, the sounds that we create. They kind of fill in the spaces between what we're trying to say, and that can be felt.
Yes, beyond words is definitely a great phrase. In fact, I did a workshop once called Beyond Words. You've got it. It is beyond words. So I'd say everybody just get along and chant and see what happens for you.
Awesome.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you so much for this. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been an interesting chat and one that I really have enjoyed. And I'm going to continue my exploration of chanting. Nikki has kindly mentioned that she may be able to have me look after one of her instruments, which will be an amazing exploration for myself into this new world of chanting. And I really appreciate that from Nikki. Please do check out her stuff. Please do connect with her in some way if you feel like it, because there is a lot to kind of, I guess, experience with the world of chanting. And Nikki is a great, I guess, door opener in that area. So again, thank you, Nikki, if you're listening to this, and thank you out there for listening to this. And I will catch you in the next episode. Be well.